The story begins in the labyrinth city of Nagin, and a girl named Yono attends her school class in the city. The teacher tells them that word arts are techniques that distort natural phenomena, and they can only be used in this world, and they don't work in the world of the visitors. Yono looks at a classmate named Lucelles while the class is going on, and after class Lucelles talks with Yono, and she asks her to teach her force arts, as she has heard that Yono is good with that. Yono mentions that she is better at it than her other arts, and Lucelles mentions that she will be counting on her. Yono then explains that Nagin is a town of scholars, and it was built with the great labyrinth of Kiyazune at the center. We then see some swordsmen fighting a mechanical golem that came out of the labyrinth, and they manage to defeat it once, but it starts to move again, and they continue to fight it. Afterwards we see Yono teaching Lucelles how to use force arts, and Lucelles manages to use her force arts to lift up a stone. The scene then cuts to Yono having lunch with Lucelles, and Lucelles tells her about Oriatia, and she mentions that the United Western Kingdom's crown Sephite is queen, and they created Oriatia. They then go out of town in the evening, and they look at the labyrinth while eating some cookies. Lucelles states that she has heard that the Great Labyrinth has so many relics that they can never unearth at all, even when they become adults. She mentions that the path of glory is open to everyone through the labyrinth, and Yono thinks that Lucelles is right, and there is no need to be scared of anything anymore as the true demon king is dead, and the age of fear is over. She thinks that now the two of them can dream of a future filled with glory, and they return to town. An earthquake then hits the town, and it destroys all of the buildings at the center of town. Lucelles and Yono manage to survive the earthquake, but soon a metal golem gets a hold of Lucelles, and it kills her. Yono can do nothing but watch this, and she runs away. She manages to dodge all the golems on her way, and she notices that the entire city is in disarray. She manages to run out of the city, and she thinks that it would have been better if she died as well. She states that nobody understood anything, and even if the demon king is dead, it wasn't the end. A metal golem then tries to attack Yono outside of town, and Yono uses her word arts called exploding stars to defeat it easily. She can't believe that she managed to defeat the metal golem, and she thinks that she could also have saved Lucelles, if she is capable of defeating them. She cries thinking about this, and some more metal golems then come there. Yono tries the same attack to defeat them as well, but it doesn't work on them. Yono then decides to leave her fate in their hands, but a swordsman saves her from the metal golems, and he asks her if she likes dying. Yono states that she doesn't, and the swordsman mentions that things are about to get fun for humans, and she is going to miss out if she keeps acting like this. He mentions that once everything else goes away, Yono is going to be free, and she can choose what she wants to do. Yono can't believe that the swordsman managed to defeat those golems with a chipped sword, and she asks him if he is a visitor. She finds out that he is, and Yono notices that the visitor has defeated numerous metal golems. The visitor states that no number of these things can be a match for his sword, and he eats some random plant leaves, but they taste gross, and Yono tells him that they are poisonous. The visitor then asks her if she has any food on her, and Yono tells him to run away from here, as this place is doomed. The visitor asks her why, and Yono shows her a big metal golem, and she tells him that the Great Labyrinth was a giant golem all along. She mentions that it might be a monster created to defeat the true demon king, and the visitor then kills a metal golem behind her, and he asks her if she has any food. He tells her that he hasn't had any breakfast, and Yono states that she does have some travel rations. The visitor mentions that talking to Yono is a pain, and he asks her to give him some of her rations, and in exchange he is going to slay the giant metal golem. He thinks that fighting that thing is going to be fun, and Yono asks him who he is. The visitor introduces himself as Sojiro Yagyu, and he mentions that he is a swordsman of the Yagyu Shinkage Ryu style. He is the last Yagyu on Earth, and he asks Yono how she used that word art just now. He asks her to teach him that, and Yono tells him that visitors can't use this power. She explains that the world of the visitors is based solely on the laws of physics, and they speak only using the words of sound, so word arts are beyond their understanding. Sojiro thinks that it's because the people here don't speak Japanese, and Yono mentions that word arts are the reason they are able to converse right now, and they use them to ask the air and objects to move or burn. Sojiro states that he doesn't get it, but a sword is much better. Yono then tries to convince Sojiro to flee, as defeating that thing now won't change anything because everyone is already dead. Sojiro doesn't listen to her, and he mentions that he is going to fight, as it will be fun. He then goes to fight the monster, and on the way, he defeats the metal golems that he comes across. The giant golem then tries to punch Sojiro, but Sojiro manages to dodge, and he climbs up on the golem's arm. The giant golem then sends some small golems to attack Sojiro, but Sojiro uses the golems as footholds to get close to the giant golem. The giant golem then uses thermal arts to attack Sojiro, and Yono thinks that this is the same attack that it used to burn the city. Sojiro manages to dodge this attack as well, and he cuts a part of the giant golem's head. This powers down the giant golem temporarily, and Sojiro thinks that the little golems made some nice footholds for him. The golem then begins to move again, and it tries to attack Sojiro with its left arm, but Sojiro uses the golem's momentum against it, and he manages to slice its left arm. The sliced arm lands on the golem's right arm, and it destroys its right arm. This takes down the giant golem, and all the golems in the city stop functioning. Yono can't believe that Sojiro really managed to defeat the giant golem, and she wonders why the Great Labyrinth started moving today. She wonders if it's because of Sojiro, and she wonders if it reacted to his strength. She thinks that he might have activated it because he wanted to fight it, and Sojiro mentions that cutting up this golem was more fun than cutting AM1. Yono doesn't understand what he means, and he tells her that he is talking about a tank, but Yono still doesn't get it. She then asks him how he managed to defeat that thing, and Sojiro mentions that it's easy to discover their life seal if they imagine where they would put it if they were the ones who created that thing. He mentions that it wouldn't be in the legs, and the chest has that flame-throwing weapon. The waist carries too much weight, and it used its left hand to attack first. This just left the right arm, and it was simple elimination. Sojiro then tries to leave, but Yono stops him, and she gives him the rations that she promised him. Sojiro mentions that he forgot about that, and he eats the rations. He thinks that it's better than bugs or grass, and Yono thinks that she hates strong people, who made her life insignificant. She thinks that she is a weakling, and as a weakling she needs a goal to support her through life, even if that goal is wrong. Sojiro then mentions that it's time to move on, and find something even more fun, and he wonders which way he should go. Yono states that he should head to Oriatia, and she mentions that it has become the largest country there is. Sojiro asks her if there are strong foes there, and Yono states that there are, and she mentions that the Council of Oriatia is gathering heroes from around the world. They are planning to do something big, and Sojiro thinks that this is perfect. Yono then thinks that there are many strong people in this world who can kill this man, and there must be enemies out there that won't lose to him. She thinks that there is the second general of Oriatia, who everybody knows as Roseclay the Absolute. There is also Krafner, the Hatch of Truth, who speaks of mastering an unknown fifth system of word arts, and Taroa the Awful, who hides away in the distant White Mountains. There is Laknoka the Winter, whom nobody has ever seen, and a visitor who liberated the Great Ice Fortress 9 years ago, Kazuki the Black Tone. In this world countless threats and truths still remain, and Yono thinks that she has to know who this man is, and what exactly the distant world is. She tells Sojiro that she will guide him to Oriatia, and she mentions that Oriatia won't suspect him if he is with a scholar of Nagin. Sojiro states that he likes her expression, and he mentions that now Yono can do anything she wants, as she is free. Yono thinks that now that she has lost everything, she feels like she can do something wild, and she introduces herself to Sojiro as Yono the Distant Telone. The narrator then mentions that the horizon is crawling with countless Shura, and this is the story of the first one, the one who can defeat golems using only his sword, and the one who exercises supreme swordsmanship that reduces widespread legends into mere truths. The one who understands the vital spots of all living creatures, and possesses an instinct for slaughter. He couldn't even be contained in the reality of his world, and he is Sojiro the Willow Sword. Sojiro then notices that someone else was here, and they defeated the metal golems by precisely targeting their life seals, and he laughs thinking that they will make a good opponent for him. The story continues, and the narrator mentions that the true Demon King has died. The enemy of the world that filled the horizon with fear was defeated by somebody, but to this day nobody knows who that person was. Now the age of fear is over, but a hero has to be chosen. The scene then cuts to the new Principality of Lithia, and the narrator mentions that a general named Taran the Guarded has broken away from Oriatia, the only Minion kingdom. Taran has declared independence for the regional city along the canal, and is calling it the new Principality of Lithia. This was also a serious military provocation that threatened Oriatia's control over the frontier. The narrator then states that on this day Lana the Moon Tempest was scheduled to return to Lithia after being dispatched as a spy by Terran. We then see Lana on a carriage, and she notices a bunch of wyverns following their carriage from behind. She thinks that the wyverns attack in swarms like this when they move in on minions, and at this speed they are bound to catch up to them. She then asks the driver if they are going to reach Lithia before the wyverns manage to catch up to them, and the driver states that there is no chance of that as they can already see the wyvern swarm. Lana tells the driver to get a move on, and the driver states that he is going as fast as he can. The skeleton with her mentions that they are going to get eaten at this rate, and Lana asks a mercenary named Higuare if he is feeling confident. Higuare states that he can eliminate all of them, and he mentions that he has heard that Master Terran is a self-proclaimed demon king. Lana mentions that this is just a nickname that the kingdom has given her, and Higuare states that he understands that Minion society is ruled by 3 kingdoms. Lana tells him that he is wrong, and she mentions that now it's just Oriatia, and the other kingdoms have perished because of the true demon king. This is why for Oriatia, they are the true demon king, and the rest are just self-proclaimed demon kings. Higuare states that the true demon king was also self-proclaimed, and Lana mentions that he was different, and he was the real deal. The skeleton then mentions that even a visitor would be more knowledgeable than Higuare, and he wonders how Higuare can be in the mercenary business without knowing any of this. Higuare mentions that he has dedicated his life to his sword, for reasons he can't mention, and he then asks the skeleton his name. The skeleton introduces himself as Shulk the Sound Slicer, and Higuare mentions that the wyverns aren't the only thing approaching them. We then hear some gunfire, and we see that some bandits are trying to attack the carriage. Lana thinks that with both the wyverns and the bandits, they are completely boxed in, and the bandits then use some bombs to make the carriage halt, but the driver doesn't stop the carriage. The wyverns then attack the bandits, and getting a close look at them, Lana states that they are saved. She mentions that these dragons have been tamed to be a part of Linia's army, and the dragons take down the bandits one after the other. After killing them all, the wyvern leader tells some of his troops to head to the other side of the hill, and he asks them to refrain from eating minion flesh. He tells them to slash them to bits, so they know what happens to fools who go against the new principality. They then notice a swarm of wyverns trying to attack them, and the 2 wyvern swarms fight each other. The tamed wyverns manage to defeat the stray wyverns, and the leader of the tamed wyverns uses a fire breath to deal the finishing blow to them. Seeing this, Lana mentions that this was Regnagi's thermal arts, and Higuare asks her if Regnagi is a wyvern. Lana tells him that he is, and she mentions that every wyvern swarm has a leader. Regnagi is their leader, and as long as they are on guard, the principality is well protected. She mentions that no other city has utilized wyverns for aerial attack, and she states that they are invincible. Shulk wonders why the bandits attacked if this is the case, and Lana mentions that this is why the 2 of them are necessary. Shulk wonders if they are not the real enemy, and Lana states that somebody is directing the bandits. Higuare then remembers that they call Turan a self-proclaimed demon king, and he realizes that Oriatia is after these attacks. The scene then cuts to Oriatia, and the narrator mentions that this city is ruled by the last Minion queen, but the politics of the city are not steered by the queen, but the 29 officials. We then see 2 of the officials talking, and one of them named Hito mentions that trade attacks by bandits aren't going to be enough, as they are dealing with Turan the Guarded. Jelki states that this is why they are having this discussion, and he mentions that the imperial competition to decide the hero is a major undertaking. He states that they won't have the means to deal with Lithia if they engage in an all-out attack, and therefore war should be their last resort. Hito states that they should have an assassination in this case, and he wonders if this could be done by the squad of the 17th minister named Elia. Jelki states that he does have a spy there, but they are currently investigating something else. Hito states that suppressing the wyverns should be the 6th general named Hargan's expertise, but he would like to keep that guy out of this. Jelki agrees, and he mentions that Hargant is currently headed to Tyleet Ravine to subdue a dragon. Hito states that he has no chance, and he mentions that he can use whomever he wants for the assassination as long as it doesn't lead back to Oriatia. Jelki asks him who he plans to use, and Hito states that an assassination doesn't always need to be done silently, as sometimes people also die in huge accidents. He then asks Jelki if he can get the vortical stampede released, and the scene cuts to Tylete Ravine. Hargant goes to the dragon hunting squad's encampment, and Peak serves him some tea. She mentions that Hargant seems weary, and Hargant states that anyone would be weary when going to slay a dragon. He asks her about the tracking unit, and she mentions that she has divided the soldiers into 3 groups and positioned them. She states that she has got 2 people patrolling the valley at all times, and Hargant asks her to make that number 3 starting tomorrow. Peak then asks Hargant if the smoldering one is really injured, and Hargant states that they wouldn't be here if it wasn't. They would normally see it soaring in the sky, but right now he is hiding in his nest. He states that now is his chance, and if he can slay VK on the smoldering, then his name will go down in history. He mentions that they are going to wait for him to starve and fly out, and a soldier then receives word that their shooters are getting attacked. Hargant asks the soldier to patch him through to them, and talking to them Hargant finds out that VK is crawling above ground towards their location. Hargant can't believe this, and Peak tells him to retreat. Hargant refuses to do so, and Peak then senses something, and she uses her word arts to send Hargant out of the tent. Moments later the tent gets blown out by a dragon's breath, and Hargant lays eyes on VK. VK asks Hargant if there are any other hunting parties out there, and Hargant notices that VK is badly injured, and VK asks him to answer or he is going to torture him. Hargant wonders what happened to VK's body, and VK asks him if he has ever seen a champion. Hargant wonders if a minion champion did this to VK, and VK states that they could never do this to him. He mentions that he will tell him the truth, and he states that a wyvern did this to him. He mentions that he has told Hargant of his humiliation, and he states that it's Hargant's turn to answer now. Hargant mentions that he is the last of the hunting party, and VK states that he will forgive the foolish minions, but in exchange Hargant is going to smolder in his flames. He then tries to attack Hargant with a breath attack, and Hargant tries to fight back with a crossbow that he created using his word arts, but it's no use against a dragon. A wyvern named Hoshihase Ars then comes there, and the narrator explains that Ars was born with 3 upper limbs, and those arms craved for something new, and he wanted to prove that he was more than a wyvern. He longed for everything that was out of his reach, and before long that desire led him to obtain a town's treasure, conquer a land, and a labyrinth, and now he is on the verge of destroying a legend. VK then asks Ars what he wants, as he has already taken his treasure, and Ars states that he is only doing what's natural, and Hargant attacks Ars, and he asks him to stay out of this. VK then attacks Ars, and Ars dodges, and he hits VK's eye with a bullet. He mentions that these are poison magic bullets from the arboreal sky spire of the West Cliff. It explodes when it comes in contact with the nerves, and Ars then uses his magic to shapeshift the bullet and take down VK. Hargant then attacks Ars, but Ars dodges, and Hargant wonders why Ars wants to steal his enemy from him. Ars mentions that he was only helping his friend, and Hargant states that he is not his friend. He mentions that he is a general of Oriatia now, and he is a wyvern killer. He has killed hundreds of wyverns like him to rise up in the world, and he still wants glory at this age, and this is why he came here to kill VK. Ars states that this is why he likes Hargant, and he mentions that he has heard about the imperial competition at Oriatia. Everyone is trying to put forth a hero, and he won't mind partaking in it. We then see that VK is still alive, and he attacks Ars and Hargant with a breath attack, but Ars uses an artifact called the Great Shield of the Dead to block the attack, and he slashes VK in 2. Hargant thinks that Ars couldn't even move his arms when he first met him, and he tells Ars that the 29 officials of Oriatia are searching for a hero. They are gathering the strongest people from around the world, and he should also come if he is proud of his strength. However, he won't choose Ars, and he will never use his strength to seize glory. Ars states that he knows this, and he mentions that Hargant's desire is really radiant. He states that one day Hargant is going to become much more than he is right now, and he leaves for the labyrinth city of Nagin. Hargant wonders why he is heading to a ruined city, and Ars states that there is something he wants there. The narrator then mentions that Ars is someone who can handle any kind of weapon there is, and he possesses unusual magic items collected from all over the world. He has challenged numerous labyrinths and enemies throughout the vast world, and triumphed over them all. His desires even led him to surpass dragons, making him the fastest airborne creature. The story continues with Taran the guarded making her daily rounds around Lithia, and a kid approaches her. Taran asks him what's the matter, and she mentions that she doesn't have any sweets to give him. The boy states that his father says that Taryn has helped him out a lot, and he has been getting more customers, so he wanted to thank her. Taryn understands, and she mentions that it's not like she is helping out his father personally, and creating plans to ensure that the citizens of Lithia don't suffer is her duty. She mentions that he should thank his father if he wants to thank anyone, and the boy then gives Taryn a box that he made at his handicrafts club, as a gift. Taryn accepts it, and she mentions that she can keep her hairbands in this. She then tells the boy to become a fine citizen of Lithia like his father, and she leaves. The narrator then explains that Taryn the Guarded has seen many battles, and she once belonged to the 29 officials of Aureatia. She was the 23rd general, and she was an outstanding talent. She excelled not only in literary arts, but also martial arts and politics, and when the true demon king died, she declared her independence from Aureatia. Acknowledged as a self-proclaimed demon king, she possesses her own military force, and is preparing for a war with Aureatia. Taryn then heads to her office, and while on the way she thinks that war with Aureatia is coming, and she must hasten her preparations, and she mustn't miss this chance for victory. She then enters her office, and she mentions that she knows that Dakai is here. Dakai comes down from above, and he asks her how she knew. Taryn tells him that it was just a guess, and she always says this when she comes back to her office. She mentions that it was worth doing this just to see his reaction, and Dakai mentions that Taryn is something else. Taryn then asks Dakai if he found what she asked him to get from Negan, and Dakai gives her a lens. He asks her if this is what she wanted, and Taryn mentions that this is the cold star, and this is what she wanted. She mentions that Dakai really is resourceful, and Dakai asks her what that thing is. Taryn mentions that it's a magic item from before the time of the true Demon King, and she suspects that the true Demon King named Kiyazuna used this to power the Great Labyrinth. After they pass sunlight through the central crystal, it can become an explosive light capable of even bombarding a city. Dakai states that it sounds dangerous, and Taryn mentions that not a single thing cast out of the distant world is gentle in nature. Enchanted swords, magic items, and aberrant entities that cannot be tolerated in the distant world flow into their world. Dakai wonders if she is talking about him, and Taryn wonders if Dakai thinks of himself as gentle. She mentions that at least his weapon named the Magic Blade Razakort, which prides itself on taking the initiative in any attack, is not gentle. She asks him if this was also cast out of the distant world, and Dakai states that it might have been, and Taryn asks him if he found other magic items besides Cold Star and Negan. Dakai mentions that he did look around, but he didn't find anything else of value. Taryn mentions that it's fine, and Dakai wonders if she doesn't mind that he didn't bring the golem back. He mentions that he doesn't know who defeated it, but it looked like a serious piece of gear. Taryn states that she thought that Dakai was the one who defeated it, and Dakai mentions that this just means that there is someone else who is as strong as him. Taryn states that it's a shame, as she would have liked to see Dakai use that sword of his, and Dakai tells her that he is not a swordsman. Taryn then states that now she has to give Dakai another job, as he has already found the treasure, and she mentions that for nearly 2 months now, merchant carriages going in and out of Lithia are getting attacked by outlaws sent from Aureatia. Dakai states that he has heard about this, but Regna G should be protecting the skies of Lithia, and a bunch of outlaws should pose no threat to him. Taryn then explains to him that the outlaws pose another problem, and she mentions that the enemy is using them to observe the measures that they take. Like when the wyvern interception will be slightly delayed, or when important cargo is about to be carried out. Dakai wonders if she thinks that someone is leaking information to Aureatia, and Taryn mentions that she does, and she asks Dakai to find out who it is, and capture them. The scene then cuts to some merchants talking to each other, and Dakai goes to them. He mentions that some outlaws came right up to the front of the city, and he wonders if it was to send in spies. He wonders if they are trying to find a hole in their aerial defense system, and he mentions that they must have hitched a ride with one of the merchants to slip into Lithia. They must have acted like they were merchants from elsewhere who were attacked, and if they are identifying themselves as merchants, there must be more of them. He thinks that the others must be snooping in on the command structure, and a sniper then shoots at him, but he defends himself. The other merchants also bring out their weapons, and Dakai notices that there are 4 shooters, and 3 others are hiding. He then kills the guys on the ground, and he manages to dodge the bullets from all 4 of the shooters. He thinks that the shooters must be reloading now, and he takes out 2 of them instantly. He takes out another man hiding with a shooter, and he then takes out one of the men who was trying to flee. He stops the other two fleeing men, and he thinks that there should be one more left after them. One of the men asks him to show them mercy and not kill them, but Dakai kills him, as he realizes that he is just buying time for their last man to run away. He tells the other man that he doesn't need to keep any of them alive, as everything is recorded in these papers that he got from the guy he just killed. The remaining man asks him to show him mercy as a swordsman, but Dakai kills him regardless, and he mentions that he is not a swordsman, he is a bandit. Taran then states that Dakai the magpie is an aberrant entity that cannot be tolerated in the distant world, and a visitor that flowed into this world. The narrator mentions that he is the one who can stop even the speed of bullets in his consciousness, and he possesses a remarkable eyesight and an enchanted sword. He boasts the power of insight, and he can conquer impregnable labyrinths alone. He plunders in the moment of utmost crisis, and possesses fingers of absolute precision and divine speed. He steals across the world, without any regard for the law, and he is a minia called Dakai the magpie. Dakai then kills the last of the spies, and he wonders what Oriatia is going to do now. The scene then cuts to Regnaji calling an assembly of the wyverns, and in the assembly, he mentions that they are here to sentence one rotten individual to death. He mentions that they all must have heard about the Lithia citizen that went missing today, and it was a 9-year-old Minian child. He suspects that one of them must know something about this, and one of the wyverns mentions that he saw Deputy Commander Lukwal of the Southern Guerrilla Unit eating a child. Regnaji then states that they receive more than enough food for protecting the citizens of Lithia, and this is the deal that they have made. He tells everyone that eating a Lithian citizen is a grave act of treason, and this will starve their entire group. He wonders if the Deputy Commander Lukwal has anything to say in his defense, and Lukwal says nothing. Regnaji then uses a fire attack on the wyvern that informed him about Lukwal, and he mentions that no one could trick him. He then kills the wyvern, and he states that this is what happens to those who break the rules. He mentions that any scum who eats Lithian citizens will be sentenced to death, and he states that this scum joined their ranks 1 year ago. He mentions that he didn't break this guy hard enough, and those who entered their ranks in the same period will report for reconditioning. He states that no one will ever break the rules again, and he leaves. Afterwards, while flying, Regnaji thinks that he leads a swarm of trash. He must be superior to any other wyverns for this reason, and he is not going to run away from the swarm. We then find out that Regnaji is a part of the same swarm that ours used to belong to, but ours left their swarm. Regnaji thinks that those who are really strong take responsibility for others, and we then see a blind girl writing her journal in Braille. She writes that Regnaji seems especially busy lately, and Regnaji then comes to her room. The girl named Kurt asks him if he was deployed today as well, and Regnaji mentions that he just got back from chasing the outlaws. He mentions that he doesn't have time to mess around like her, and Kurt tells him that she has been writing a diary. She heard that nobles who can write, keep a record of their daily lives in books like this every day, and if she does the same, then she will always remember what the two of them talked about. Regnaji wonders how she is going to write, when she can't see, and Kurt mentions that it's a challenge that she has been enjoying lately. Kurt then thinks that it should still be bright outside, and she tries to touch Regnaji, but Regnaji dodges her. He asks her to not touch him, and Kurt states that she can't even catch him off guard. Regnaji mentions that a small fry like her can't ever hope to touch him even if she tried for a lifetime, and Kurt states that this might be true, and she will have to think of another way. Kurt then wonders if Regnaji likes it here in Lithia, and Regnaji asks her how she feels, as she can't even see. Kurt states that she likes it, as it's beautiful, and Regnaji mentions that he envies Kurt for being that silly. He then lies down, and he wonders if Kurt is not going to sing today. Kurt states that there are plenty of singers who are better than her, and Regnaji mentions that she is one who he wants to hear. Kurt then starts to sing, and the narrator mentions that even after everything is over, not even a single person knows who the true Demon King was, and what he did to his hometown. Kurt never saw it for herself, but she lost her sight after that indescribable terror. Even so, one girl and one wyvern didn't lose themselves to insanity, and Kurt believes that the surreal song she heard in the darkness is what brought back their sanity. Kurt then stops singing, and she asks Regnaji what is going to happen to Lithia. Regnaji wonders if Kurt plans to stay in Lithia, and Kurt states that she can't leave, as her mother is the monarch of Lithia. Regna G tells her that people are going to die, as a war is about to begin, and Kurt states that this may be true, but she can't leave Regna G behind. Regna G mentions that dullards like her will be the first ones to die if a war breaks out, and Kurt states that he is right. She tries to touch Regna G again, but Regna G dodges once more. Afterwards she tells Regna G that when the world began there was an angel, the angel and wordmaker created everything. Regna G wonders if she believes this legend, and Kurt mentions that she does. She thinks that it would be great if Regna G were an angel. She then starts to sing again, and the narrator mentions that he is the one who rules over a freely flying force that rules the vast skies of the world. He commands absolute obedience, and he has a sharp battle acumen. He has firmly rooted himself at the core of a nation, and he is Regna G, the wings of sunset. Elsewhere a transporter states that this time he has to deliver a tricky cargo, but he is sure that this is going to work out, as he has an angel on his side. The scene then cuts to Oriasia's central detention center, and a soldier informs Hido that they have received a report from the headquarters in Mage City. Hido asks him if the new principality issues already fall under his jurisdiction, and the soldier mentions that they do. He states that the third minister Jelki sent notification this morning, and Hido thinks that Jelki is working at breakneck speeds. Hido then asks the soldier what the report was, and the soldier informs him that they have lost communication with 10 members of their secret service in a single day. Hido thinks that their base might have been surrounded, and he wonders if anyone escaped. The soldier mentions that not even a single one managed to escape, even though all of them were elite agents commanded by the 17th minister. Hido then asks the soldier how many men he is going to need to deal with this, and the soldier states that he would need 64 men from the 16th squad. He will also need a sniper team, and Hido asks him if Ilia, the 17th minister, knows of this. He mentions that she is the one who leads the tactical squads, and he should probably report to her before him, but he has heard that she is currently undercover on a different operation. The soldier mentions that she is in a remote region where radio communication isn't possible, so he thought to report to Hido first as he is the person in charge of this. Hido states that he hasn't been officially appointed yet, and he thinks that everyone around here just does what they want. The soldier then asks him if they should send in new undercover agents, and Hido mentions that they would only be sending them to their deaths. He states that they need to try something else, and he mentions that to the east of Mage City headquarters, there is a sunken ground that's been carved out by a stream. He asks the soldier to have his men set up camp there, and the soldier mentions that this sunken ground is extremely far out from the headquarters, and it's not a particularly useful position for defense. Hido tells him that they are going to use that position to attack, as the wyverns won't spot them there, and he will send over new fortification experts tomorrow. The soldier then asks Hido if he will be in control of the release of the vortical stampede, and Hido mentions that he will, and he asks the soldier to move out of the way. He then bangs on the doors of a prison cell, and he tells the prisoner named Nihilo that he knows that she is awake. Nihilo then gets up, and Hido tells her that 10 Secret Service members based in Lithia were wiped out in a single day. He asks her how many she needs to deal with this, and Nihilo states that she would only need one. Hido then explains that Nihilo, the vortical stampede, is a girl who single-handedly annihilated a whole regional army in Oriasia. Hido then lets Nihilo out of her cell, and Nihilo mentions that to be precise she will need one being in one body. Hido states that according to current records, she is the most horrific bioweapon there is, and the scene then cuts to Ada Sylvan province. We see the 17th minister Ilia the Red Tag, and she mentions that her great-grandmother used to say that beauty is a talent given to them by an angel when they are born, but she doesn't think that it's true. She states that beauty appears with talent and hard work, and it requires meticulous maintenance. She then goes to take a bath in a hot spring, and she notices that a girl named Yuika is already in the springs. Yuika notices Ilia, and she mentions that she thought that Ilia had already gone back to Oriasia. Ilia states that her lessons are over, but she is going to be in this village until tomorrow, and she thought that she should take a bath before leaving. Yuika wonders if Kia is also going to stay until tomorrow, and Ilia mentions that she is, and she will bid her farewells to everyone before leaving. Yuika then asks Ilia to give her a private lesson, and she agrees, and she mentions that she will teach her about word art systems. She mentions that there are 4 main systems in word arts, but the elves don't differentiate between them. Yuika states that she knows, and she mentions that there are thermal arts and crafts arts, but she can't remember the other two. Ilia states that it's great that Eureka already knows two of them, and Eureka mentions that Moya from next door told her about this. She mentions that she knew another one, but she forgot, and Ilia tells her that the other two are force arts and life arts. Ilia then states that Eureka should already know about thermal arts, and she mentions that it's the same thing that her mother uses in the kitchen. Eureka states that she can use it as well, and Ilia mentions that if this is the case then Eureka should cook something for her the next time she comes to visit. Eureka asks her to leave this to her, and Ilia then uses force arts on some water, and the water splashes around on Eureka. Ilia apologizes for this, and she mentions that she is not too good with force arts. Eureka states that she is fine, and Ilia tells her that with force arts they can move things, and send them flying. She explains that this is what the people use to change the direction of an arrow in mid-flight, and if they can use it well, they can also fly in the air for a brief moment. Eureka is excited to hear this, and she asks about craft arts. Ilia then uses craft arts on some water, and she shows Eureka that the water has turned like solid. Eureka wonders if it has turned to ice, but she notices that the water is still warm. Ilia explains to her that craft arts are used to change the shape of things, and Eureka thinks that this is amazing. Lastly, Ilia explains the life arts, and she mentions that this is what the doctors use. She wonders if anyone here can treat wounds, and Eureka states that Granny Mitch can. Ilia states that Granny Mitch wouldn't be able to heal the wounds of an outsider like her, and she mentions that it's because she wouldn't know what words to convey with her word arts, as she hasn't known her for long. She states that the same is true for wind, water and every other thing. Eureka wonders if it won't work between the two of them, and Ilia states that it won't, but unlike living things, water is obedient, and even though it's just been 6 months since she has come here, she can still use word arts with it. Ilia then uses life arts on some water, and Eureka notices that the water has turned sweet. Ilia explains that life arts can change the property of things, and using this they can even change water to wine. Eureka states that she never knew any of this, and she mentions that when she asked Granny Mitch about why she could heal wounds, she just said that she can. Ilia states that this makes sense as elves are naturally good with life arts, and she mentions that life arts is also her strong suit. Hearing this, Eureka asks her to heal her if she ever gets injured, and Ilia agrees. However, she thinks that her true talent lies in killing with life arts. Ilia then ends the lesson and she mentions that they should pick it up when she comes back the next time. Eureka understands, and she hugs Ilia. She mentions that she loves her, and she will continue loving her even if she goes back to Oriatia. Ilia states that she loves her as well, and she thinks that she can never tell Eureka the true reason why she came here. The scene then cuts to Ilia returning to the village, and she meets a girl named Kia on the way. Kia refers to her as Professor Viper as she is a two-faced woman who acts sophisticated in front of others, but is actually a total slob at home. Ilia asks her what she is doing up there, and Kia mentions that she was thinking of taking a bath when Ilia came out, but she took forever. Ilia tells her that it's wrong to use word arts to peep on others, and Kia states that she only climbed up here because there aren't any bugs there. Kia then asks the branches of a tree to get her down, and the branches then shrink back to a seed, and Kia puts it back in the fruit which she took it from. Ilia then explains that word arts require both an understanding of the target object and a special incantation, but Kia's word arts defy these fundamental rules. She states that Kia shouldn't use her word arts on a whim, and it should only be used for bringing happiness to others. She states that her power is special so she shouldn't use it in a normal way, and Kia mentions that normal is fine with her as long as she enjoys life. Ilia tells her that what's normal here might not be normal outside, as she will be going to Lithia soon. She states that there are various races in Lithia, and she should think about how others perceive her, otherwise people might talk badly of her. Kia states that she doesn't care, and she mentions that she will just tell them to die if that happens, and if she does then they will really die. The scene then cuts to Kia saying goodbye to Eureka and Tien, and Ilia joins them. We see that Tien seems to have a crush on Ilia, and Eureka mentions that he only came here to say goodbye to Ilia. Ilia is happy to hear this, and Tien mentions that everyone in this village is grateful to Ilia for teaching them all kinds of things. He states that Ilia has done so much for them, but he can't give her anything in return. Ilia hugs Tien, and she states that it's fine as she is satisfied just having cute students like him, and Eureka hugs her as well. Ilia then explains that she came here under a false identity and secured a study abroad program for Kia in Oriatia. She did this for the purpose of the imperial competition to determine the hero, and she thinks that the competition should be easy for Kia as she is capable of defeating any and all opponents. If she wins, then she would no longer be looked down upon for being the child of a concubine, and Eureka then asks Kia to go to her favorite spot with her, one last time. Tian wonders what place they are talking about, and Kia mentions that it's just a place that Eureka likes. Eureka asks Kia to just come with her, and Kia mentions that Ilia doesn't need to come with them, but Ilia states that she will tag along, and they all head to the place together. On the way, Ilia thinks that while she was teaching the kids about the use of forest plants, she sent detailed records of certain herbs to Oriatia by bird, and she investigated this secluded region where dense fog hinders human passage. She mentions that eventually the army of Oriatia is going to take everything from this village, and she states that the rumor from the era of the true demon king talked of a village where a certain individual has mighty word arts. She found the village's location from a captured Lithia soldier, and all that's left is to deal with anyone who knows about her relationship with the world word. They then reach Eureka's favorite spot, and Kia states that there is nothing special here, and this is why she asked Ilia to not follow them. Thane mentions that this might be because of the clouds, and he asks Kia to clear the clouds for them. Ilia wonders if she can really do that, and Kia then tells the clouds to clear away, and they really move away. Everyone then notices a wonderful sight with a lake, and after witnessing this, Ilia thinks that Kia is invincible, and she is going to win no matter who stands in her way. She starts to cry seeing this, and the others asks her what's wrong. The narrator then mentions that she is the one who ignores the laws of nature, possessing the power to warp everything in existence. She can dominate the entire world with a single word, and she rejects all analyses and predictions. At present her limits are yet to be measured, and she is Kia, the world word. The scene then cuts to the central citadel of Lithia, and Taran meets Shulk and Higuare. She tells Lana that she did well to secure these two prestigious fellas, but it seems like finding the world word was too much for her. Lana mentions that the world word is just a rumor that has been blown out of proportion, and if someone with almighty word arts really existed, then they could easily win any war. Taran mentions that thinking that they do exist, they will have to come up with a way to control them. She then states that she has also heard of Higuare the Pelagic, and he has never lost a battle when he fought as a gladiator in the remote regions. Higuare mentions that he fought for 13 to 14 years according to Minian calendar, and Shulk is surprised to hear that he was a slave gladiator. Taran mentions that there are barbaric cities in the remote regions that place bets on lives of people and beasts. The practice is obviously illegal, but in the era of the true demon king many places must have slipped past the reach of the kingdom. Shulk then wonders how Higuare is supposed to be invincible if he was bossed around by slave traders for 14 years, and Taran asks him if he can give an explanation. Higuare explains that he was born far in the west, in a place unknown to Minian races. We find out that he is a mandrake, and some people kidnapped him and sold him to a gladiator arena. In the arena he met a slaver, and he asked him what he is supposed to do here. The slaver gave him a sword, and he told him to fight. Higuare understood, and the next day he fought a human in the arena. They both exchanged a few sword strikes, but Higuare managed to beat him, as he was using multiple swords. He took the sword of his opponent, and afterwards he asked the slaver whom he is going to fight next. The slaver mentioned that next he is going to fight high-ranking fighters, and he asked him to put on a good show when he dies. Higuare asked him the meaning of the word die, and the slaver mentioned that in this arena, they either kill or die. The next day Higuare killed all three of his opponents, using 3 swords at once, and he collected their swords as well. After a while the slaver told him that he is going to sell Higuare to another city. Higuare asked him if he is going to fight stronger opponents there, and the slaver mentioned that he is, as the crowd wants to see him getting killed. Higuare wondered if he is going to die, and the slaver left after telling him that he is. Higuare thought that he doesn't want to die, and he then fought some humans in another city. He learned their techniques by watching them, and he defeated them easily. The same thing happened to everyone who tried to fight him, and then one day a man told him that he has become the strongest gladiator now, and not a single spectator wants to see his fall. Higuare mentioned that he will get rusty if he doesn't continue his training, but the man left him to rot in his cell. Time passed by, and Higuare wondered if there is any meaning to living like this. He thought that he is not fixated with life, but he also doesn't want to die. Then one day the man came back, and he mentioned that Higuare is going to fight alongside them. He stated that the army of the true Demon King is upon them, and Higuare then noticed the humans fighting the army of the true Demon King. The humans stood no chance against the army, but before engaging them, Higuare killed the man who had kept him locked up. He then thought that nothing has changed for him, and he still has to either kill or die. He killed one of the Demon King's minions, and he thought that he has killed many people until now. He thought that after all that, he is not going to die by this level of enemy, and he fought the Demon King's army. He thought that this must be what they call pride, and he rushed headfirst into battle, and he kept slaying the Demon King's minions left and right. Back in the present, Lana mentions that when she found him, they told her that he had been slaying the Demon King's army, and before this she had never heard of anyone who would charge in a battle like that. Dakai then comes into the room, and he notices that they have guests. Looking at the skeleton, he thinks that this must be a spear warrior, but he can't predict the mandrake's weapon of choice. He notices a knife in Higuare's body, and he thinks that he must have plenty of other knives hidden inside. Taran introduces all of them to each other, and she tells Dakai that the two of them are skilled warriors just like him, and they will fill the enemy army with dread. Lana wonders if Shulk is feeling up to the task, and Shulk mentions that unlike Higuare, he is a mercenary, and he won't start working until he receives his reward in advance. Lana states that the reward he wants is the information on the final land, where the true Demon King died, and Dakai mentions that he must be planning to flee after receiving his reward. Shulk states that he must be trying to make him work for free, and Dakai mentions that he likes someone who knows how to talk back. He states that Higuare has been awfully quiet, and he throws a fruit at him, telling him to eat it. Higuare splits the fruit into pieces, and the fruit melts. He mentions that he doesn't eat fruit, and he states that Dakai must be satisfied now that he has seen his power. Taran is taken in by his skill, and Lana wonders if this means that mandrakes can use 3 arms at once. Higuare tells her that he can use 42 arms at once, and the narrator mentions that he is the one whose dueling skills have been honed through immense bloodshed. He harbors a lethal poison that no living thing can stop, and he boasts infinitely brilliant swordplay. He obeys all, but he is ruled by none, and he is the most free slave. He is Higuare the Pelagic. The scene then cuts to Raishur Mountain Village, and Hito tells Kuze that all this luggage is slowing them down, and it will take them 3.5 days from here. He wonders if there are enough beds for the squad here, and Kuze mentions that if beds are all they need, then he knows of a orphanage of a religious order which has some rooms, but he is not sure about the food. Hito states that his soldiers won't be begging for food from the order, and he mentions that he has heard that Kuze is a cleanup guy from the order, but he wonders if Kuze is really strong. Kuze states that he is, and Hito then leaves, and Kuze thinks that he does have an angel by his side. The scene then cuts to Kuze visiting the orphanage, and he is welcomed in by a girl named Ripple who is happy to see that he is back. Kuze states that he has brought a lot of guests this time, and we see that he also has Nihilo with him. Nihilo and Ripple introduce each other, and Nihilo mentions that Kuze is her escort. Kuze asks her to not get any wrong ideas, as he is just her escort, and Ripple mentions that she knows that Kuze has never had any luck with the ladies. Ripple then leaves to make some preparations to receive her guests, and Kuze mentions that he heard that Nihilo was held as a prisoner, and he asks her if she got out because she had served her sentence. Nihilo tells him that this is not the case, and she simply promised to help Hito in exchange for her release. Kuze wonders what she would have done if she never made that promise, and Nihilo states that she would have fought her way out. She mentions that Kuze doesn't seem like the fighting type, as he is not carrying a weapon, and he looks like he is scared of killing another person. Kuze asks her to not bully him, and Nihilo mentions that despite all this, he managed to survive the era of the true Demon King just like her. Kuze states that it's nothing to brag about, and he mentions that he only survived because he had an angel by his side. The scene then cuts to him and Nihilo having dinner with the rest of the kids of the orphanage, and Kuze thanks Ripple for preparing room for the merchants he brought with him. Ripple mentions that it's fine, and she states that a while back soldiers from Oriatia also camped here. She mentions that the merchants he brought are a lot more polite than them, and Nihilo asks her why those soldiers came here. Ripple states that the soldiers were under the command of Sir Hargant, and they said that they were going to defeat VK on the Smoldering. The kids then try to play with Kuze by pretending to be soldiers after VK, and Kuze amuses them by playing the role of VK. Seeing this, Ripple thinks that Kuze hasn't changed at all, and she mentions that he has always been laid back. He is always laughing even after taking so many problems for the religious order, and the scene then cuts to Nihilo going to sleep in the room, and Kuze tells her that he is going to stand guard outside. Nihilo mentions that she wouldn't mind sleeping with him, but Kuze asks her to not tease him. Nihilo then goes inside, and Kuze rests on the bench outside. He thinks that he is glad that everyone is okay, and he states that he used to live here 4 years ago. He thinks that nothing has changed, and Ripple then comes there. She asks Kuze if he is not going to cooperate with Lithia. She mentions that after Hargan's soldiers left, people from Lithia came to investigate the place, and they said that they would support their church if they helped them. She mentions that she can't fight, but Kuze is strong, and Kuze apologizes to her and he mentions that he can't help her. He states that his way of helping wouldn't work for her. Someone then attacks Ripple, but Kuze saves her. Ripple asks them to stop, but the attackers ask her to get out of the way, as Kuze has dealings with Oriatia. Kuze then hides Ripple behind him, and he takes out his shield. The attackers fight Kuze with their swords, but Kuze blocks all of their attacks with his shield. One of the attackers then tries to attack Kuze, but the angel watching over him kills him in an instant. The others get wary to see this, but one by one they also die, before they even know what hit them. In the end, a single attacker remains, and he tries to attack Kuze in a frenzy, but Nihilo takes him out. She mentions that Kuze seemed like he was in trouble back there, and Kuze thanks her. Ripple then apologizes to Kuze, and she mentions that she never thought that these guys would try to kill him. Kuze tells her that he knows, and he mentions that she didn't do anything wrong. He asks her to show him her stomach, and he notices that her kidney has been punctured. Ripple states that she only wanted to make everyone happy just like Kuze, and she dies. Afterwards, Kuze makes a grave for her, and he mentions that Nihilo has died before, and he wonders if she saw an angel when she did. Nihilo mentions that someone just made them up, and Kuze states that he agrees with him, but even so, angels do exist. He then looks at his angel, and he mentions that angels are also lonely, and Nihilo asks him if he has been watching an angel this whole time, and Kuze states it is the angel who has been watching over him. Nihilo asks him what's the name of the angel, and Kuze mentions that he has never told this to anyone, but he will tell her. The narrator then states that she is the one who is undetected by anyone in this world, except for a single person. She is immune to interference by any means, and she has possessed the absolute authority to end a life since the dawn of time. She comes silently, and she takes everything without ever being seen. She is the embodiment of the fate of death, she is an angel, and she is Nastique, the quiet singer. Thanks for watching parts 1 to 5, the rest of the parts will be on my channel. Please like and share the video if you enjoyed it, and make sure to hit the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell to keep getting new anime recap updates.